Hello, welcome to another episode of Muse.
Make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell, fam.
Alright everyone, welcome back. We're at episode 17 tonight and I'm actually very honoured to have Keeley Shade. Keeley, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Ben.
Oh man, most welcome. In fact, I heard you from having to review your song On My Mind, which is coming off of your EP called, I believe it's Give Me Time.
Yeah.
Is that right? And
that's coming out in May.
May. So that's something to make note of, and it's the fifth song, so it's the last song of the set of 5, which I find really interesting because it kind of means that there must be some sort of, hopefully some narrative that leads up to that particular song. Is that right?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Excellent. I guess we could, we typically start this and we ask you a little bit about your musical history, what got you into music, you know, why you play music, who are some of your inspirations, because I think as a teenager and someone who's interested, even if someone isn't a teenager and watching this and they're like, I want to learn about this, it's always cool to find out kind of what inspired and got you involved in it. So start talking about that if you like.
Yeah, of course. So you can probably tell from my accent, I was born in Canada, and I guess the earliest musical experience I remember is being like 6 or 7 and watching American Idol. It's a big thing in the evenings, and I remember just like lying on the carpet seeing Kelly Clarkson win, and I was like, oh wow,
Amazing.
like that'd be cool if I could do that one day. And I would walk around at lunch times just singing songs like the Shrek theme song, like songs from movies and stuff with my friends. So that kind of stuck with me. And then going into school, we moved over to New Zealand when I was like 8.5, and then I started guitar lessons in year 5. And I thought that was real cool. And
Nice.
I was really into picking.
Mm-hmm.
I think even since I started, I don't know if it was because my teacher gave me picking pieces, or I just like was drawn to songs that had that and found it like on Ultimate Guitar.
So you're
and just
talking
taught
like
myself.
finger picking songs?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. A lot of like folk finger picky stuff.
Yeah.
And then I kind of went in and out of lessons and wanted to teach myself for a while. And then at one point, kind of later in high school, I had Cora Lautner from Cora, the band Cora, as my
Yeah.
guitar teacher.
Cool.
And he was awesome and was also in choir basically all through school. And then leaving high school, I had always done fine art and wanted to be an artist, but then I still really loved music. And so I was like, how can I do both? Because they wouldn't let me do a conjoint with fine art and popular music. So I had to do a loophole through a BA, which then meant I had to do a bunch of classical composition theory. And I wasn't great at theory in school. And I was probably actually the only person, maybe one of 2 in my class to actually go on to university and do music.
Wow.
And so I didn't get to do anything practical, but I was doing art. So I was like, this is fine. This is okay. And then in my final year, I met a bunch of popular music students who taught me how to like perform and be less anxious and learn about software and all of that, and meet a huge community in Auckland of other musicians, which has then massively developed me as an artist. I guess that's...
I think you mentioned when I talked before with you, you knew Jeff Ong.
Yes, yeah, Jeff's cool.
So I actually messaged him a little while ago when he released some more music, and I asked him, I remember you from the pop degree, and he's like, nah, I didn't do the pop degree. I used to just hang around with the pop kids and play music. And I was like, cool.
There's always an honorary pop person.
Yeah. So did you get to do any of those popular music papers?
I got to do like the songwriting ones.
Yes.
So kind of history of the Beatles, history of UK music, how to write a song.
And who was your lecturer for that?
Graham Reed. Do you know Graham Reed?
I think so. It's been a while, man. I finished university in 2011, and then I did my teacher's diploma 2012.
I don't know if he's...
Did you learn a lot?
Big long hair.
Did you learn a lot?
Oh, in those courses?
Yeah.
Specifically?
Mm.
I mean, not heaps. Like, I was always someone that I listen intently to stuff and kind of intuitively learned how songs work, how they're structured, melodies and everything. So it was kind of like a slight development on what you do in high school. But a lot of it I'd already had a sense of.
You know what's fascinating about the Beatles, though, is like I watched, I don't know if you've seen it. I think the movie's called 8 Days a Week. It's a Ron Howard film, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, have you seen that?
Yeah. I think so, yeah. We watched that.
and it's actually kind of a similar story with Pink Floyd and many other bands. Is that like they had started. I mean, their songwriting, Beatles, is just phenomenal. Like, out of all the hits, they only had one, I believe, that uses the 4 chords of pop, right? Out of the top hits, and anyway, by the time they'd finished, I think it was like they'd done Rubber Soul and Revolver, I think it was. They were at that point where they were playing these big stadiums, and no one was there to listen to the music. They were there for the spectacle, and they called it quits doing it. And then they went and became a studio band, and they're basically the pioneers of why we have some of the recording techniques we have today. Like, I teach my kids about Sgt. Pepper and the Lonely Hearts Club Band. And the fact that they had changed their name specifically to that because they wanted to become someone else other than the Beatles. So, did you learn a lot about that stuff?
That stuff was cool. Yeah, we learned a lot about that,
Awesome.
and kind of what went into their albums and all the kind of extra meanings that I guess most people don't usually hear. Although probably now a lot of people are big Beatles fans.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I ask the kids, like, do you know who the Beatles are? And, maybe 50% do.
Oh, really?
I find that, like, sad.
Yeah.
So you did the some of the pop courses?
Definitely they should listen to, like, all of it.
Everything.
Yeah, so I did a lot, not everything. I did, the songwriting. I did a lot of education papers.
Great.
Because that's just what fit in, and I was like, I could be a music teacher one day, maybe.
Should do it.
And so that was fun. But yeah, otherwise it was mostly like 18th century score analysis or recapitulation development.
Do you like theory? What's your you be open and honest. It's really important that you tell the truth. What's your feeling on theory?
It's hard, and like I was never great at it in school. I've been always a very oral learner. I think because like when I was learning piano as a kid, like I wouldn't practice. I would just want to kind of hear what I could make. And I think I've carried that through, which is maybe a bad habit, maybe not. But I managed to get through 5 years of classical composition courses somehow. But it has, even though I didn't like it so much, it's definitely helped me. And it's important to know.
Yeah.
Even just like not even for the sake of using the theory, but for understanding how things can fit together and how you can develop stuff.
Yeah, I think theory is one of those things that I push a lot because I wish I had listened to my teacher, Andrea Rabin. If you're listening, I'm very sorry for not listening to you about theory. And when I went to do my degree, it's basically you had to know it. And like you, my oral skills were really good. And that was it. And so I had to learn everything I needed to learn in 6 weeks to get into my degree. That's how like serious it was.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I did because my goodness, like we could talk about tritone substitutions and secondary dominant chords all day. But anyway, that's about that. But okay, so let's like the song on my mind. What I really liked, and I wrote in my review for music.net.nz was that it's not your typical pop song, but it's the sort of music I would like to hear more of on radio because I think it requires, I don't know, it's catchy, it's interesting, and those are the two things that I think are good. Like it teaches people how to listen to music differently. It's challenging to listen to maybe the first couple of times if you're not familiar with that particular style. So let's talk about that song and kind of like how you wrote it and who are some of your influences that directed you to write that sort of song.
Yeah, sure. So I've always been really into folk, like since I was a teenager, like learning. I was massively into Daughter, Ben Howard, Bon Iver, huge Bon Iver fan, all of those. And I knew that like coming into writing this EP and wanting to release it, I was always very nervous about how people would receive it and whether they would or not. And so with this, I wanted to I've always loved like pop production, like high quality sounding work. So I wanted to kind of package this folky, complex, weird song in sort of a pop production little box that people can consume a bit more easily, I suppose. And yeah, so a lot of the vocal layering and kind of the ethereal quality comes from a lot of that Daughter influence, and I guess being in choirs, and the acoustic guitar, all that kind of early folk stuff, like Ben Howard. Yeah.
I mean, these are great points. We'll come back to a couple of these in a moment. So, like, I always tell students to listen to as much different music as they can, even if they don't like it. It doesn't matter. Like, just go and pay attention to it. You don't have to like it, but you should be able to critically analyze it. If you're really serious about music, you need to be able to go off and make what do you call it, like opinions, and be able to discuss things and argue for reasons why. Like, if I ask a student, why do they like a song, I've said they can't just say because it sounds cool. They need to say it sounds cool because of this. So what are some moments that are in your song that you can kind of say, like, these are some of the artists that had directed that kind of feel, and give us some examples. Like, I'm always happy to explain this is definitely influenced by this and stuff like that. But talk to us about your song and some of these artists and how they particularly influenced the song. Can you do that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Sweet.
So a lot of the sample kind of stuff, where there's a lot of kind of abstract sounds, they're not so much melodies or parts, they're kind of just things that are like thrown out at you. That's definitely a big Bon Iver influence. I've always loved this kind of abstract, you don't know what's coming next type of songwriting, where the instrumentation acts almost like lyrics. And I think possibly that's also from my fine art background, because I'm a very visual songwriter, and I grew up listening to, with my dad playing Eagles and
Nice.
Elton John when I was small. So these very visual storytellers, and I think that really stuck with me. And so I think when I'm writing a song, I don't just hear it or write it, I visually see kind of a story.
Wow.
And none of my friends get it. No one I've met does that, which is really strange. So everything that I put in represents something, or it's just a note to something else. Yeah.
I mean, when I write, I typically will think about a part that go there for a particular reason, but I don't visually see it, that's a very interesting concept. Especially lyrically, a lot of songwriters will talk about how they just write whatever happens to the melody. They're singing melodies to try to find what fits with their chord progression, and then whatever those words are, it's kind of, they just write those down. In most cases, some people don't even re-edit them. They become the song. It's almost like you're talking. Yeah. Something's talking through you, if that makes sense. Yeah. It's very deep and philosophical. But what about your lyrics? What is the song about? On My Mind.
On My Mind. So it's basically the kind of remembering of a first date or a relationship or something that was an encounter that was quite poignant to you, but sadly didn't turn into anything, or the person kind of exited your life. But reflecting on that and being like, oh, this was really beautiful, and this kind of changed me in a way. And even though I've kind of left that experience and I'm no longer connected to that person or thing, I can take that with me and enter new situations and kind of create who I am through meeting these people.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And when you write your lyrics, then do you do what I just explained moments ago about they just show up, or do you have a pretty keen idea or a fair idea of exactly what it is you're trying to achieve with that song? Do songs just kind of there's some painters, I don't know much about fine art, so I'm probably going to embarrass myself here, but I'm pretty sure there's some painters that just throw paint at a canvas, and then they describe what it is later on, as in they attach meaning to it. They're like, oh, that means this. Yeah. Some painters, most painters, I assume, would have a vision of what it is they're trying to create. Then they chip away at that until it's completed. How does that work with you as a songwriter?
Yeah, well, I'm someone that I write because I need to.
Okay.
Otherwise I can't function. I write songs because there's something that I need to get outside of me. And so I always have kind of a clear idea of what it is that I'm wanting to write about. But in terms of the actual writing of words, my friends freak out about this. I'll come up with entire phrases and just boom, and then don't edit it. Rather than kind of a brainstorming of things. It's full kind of concepts and kind of poem structure. And then I'll often go back and then add that to music. Or sometimes I'll start with sort of a riff, a guitar picky thing, and then just come up with ideas, or go back to those notes and then bring that into that song.
So On My Mind is really interesting then, because the melody at the beginning feels familiar in a good way. It means that people are going to be drawn into it. but there's so many changes in it. Like, so when you're writing and you're thinking, like you just described how you're coming up with ideas and generating it, I mean, you've got to make some pretty, stern decisions around, like, I want to change here. Like, the middle of the song completely goes in a different direction. A whole other guitar riff comes in. It feels like the whole song has changed from one song to another. But then it finds its way back. Like, talk to us about that process. Like, what are you doing there?
Sure. So, if I can get all theory on you.
Good, do
so
it. I love it.
So, I guess we'll start with the verse. Like, what happens with the verse is we have chord 6 going to chord 5, which is already sort of unusual. And you get this kind of tension release thing happening. And then that resolves in the third chord of the progression.
Which is chord 1.
Chord 1, home chord, and then goes to chord 4, G flat. So you get this kind of like, we're not arriving anywhere, but we're not going anywhere kind of thing, I guess. And then it's the same almost in the chorus, but slightly different, where we start with 6, but then go to 1. So you have that sense of arriving at home earlier.
Yeah.
And you get that kind of satisfaction that you want from a chorus. And then in the also over like the third chord, which is D flat over F. So it's not too minor, like it still has that hopeful tonality that I wanted in the song. And then we also skip to like a little A flat for the 2 beats, so it's almost kind of like 5 chords, just to kind of move back up. And then I've done this thing where I have 2 bridges, which I don't really know another song that does that.
Sure.
Maybe you do.
Well, I mean, that's what progressive music kind of is like throwing out the structure of what people are used to. Like,
yeah, it just felt like it needed to go somewhere else before going back to the chorus, because I imagined it as like, here's the state where I'm feeling upset about having this loss, but then now I've kind of come to this resolve where I've recognized that I've learned something from it.
Because it feels real happy when you get to that point. When the guitar comes in, it's like it's like real chirpy, and it's like it goes into feels like a straight 4/4 beat. Whereas before you're doing this like 6/8 feel over over 4, which is, I always kind of, it's hard to describe it. It's almost like, it's not swing. It's like a shuffle. So it's like a 4/4, and it's got the shuffle. The 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 underneath it. But then it changes, and I was like, when I heard that, I was like, oh, what are we doing here? And then you find your way back, which I find really neat.
Yeah, it kind of just like floats between 5 and 4, and so you get this kind of sad, non-directive section, and then we have just like 1 1 1 through this happy thing, which then takes us back into the chorus.
So then, when you're writing that, and you discussed before about how, the chords and you got this chord and then the melody, and in this case, did those words just like come out and then you didn't edit them? Did you have to edit those words because you had a narrative you wanted to achieve?
I might have done a little bit. I think for the most part it was just like, this is what I want to say, and it just kind of came out. So
then when you get to when you get to that middle section, then how did you decide to do that strange thing where you do change it so like rapidly? Where did you figure that out?
I think I got to the end of my progression and I was like, I'm not sure where else to go, and I was like, I could just like stay here because it feels like it's building even though it's not moving. Also worth mentioning is you can hear at the very start of the song the synth drone, which is holding the D flat, carries throughout the entire song in the background, so you always have this grounding of the home key even though we kind of move out into all the minor stuff, because I wanted to retain that kind of grounded positive feeling whilst telling the story,
which I find interesting. I think I mentioned that to you before we started recording, or even like before when I contacted you about this episode. I was like, I really like this thing that kind of like dips down a little bit, but then it goes back up again. It's like, those are clever things. Like, who are some of the artists that you reckon influenced you and kind of showed you those tricks, taught you those tricks? Like, how do you know how to do that? Because some kids are sitting here right now going, how did she know how to do that? How did she pick that note? And I always say to kids, it's kind of like the music you listen to is you'll know when it's right because it will just feel right. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I think like there's probably a lot of subconscious stuff that I've absorbed. But I also only learned Logic 8 months ago.
Okay.
And being able to play on there and kind of, I can drag the synth in and I can throw something over top of it. And what happens if I like have it carry across the whole thing, or I chuck another one over top? Like, having that ability to experiment allowed me to do a lot more than what I used to be able to do, and it
Yeah.
probably helped me tap into influences that were always there,
Yeah.
but that I couldn't kind of properly express on just an acoustic guitar.
Yeah, yeah. And so the EP is called what was it again? Give me the name of
Give Me Time.
Give Me Time. I was about to say that. It's Give Me Time. Is there any secrets? Are you going to keep it secret? What's it kind of about?
So the EP I wrote within the last kind of 2 years in response to my parents' divorce, which is still in progress, and it's been a really painful year and a half. And because with COVID and everything, we've all just been like stuck in this situation without being able to move forward. And out of that has come a lot of reflection for me and what's gone on in my life growing up, and also reflection on their relationship and how I perceive my relationships, and how there's a lot of sadness in that, but a lot of learning to do. And so I kind of wanted to summarize each song is kind of about a different thing, and I guess a nod to each of my parents at times. It kind of just summarizes what a relationship is and what it does to you and who you are in, I guess, that partnership. And that sometimes it doesn't work, but then sometimes it does. And just it was a real healing experience and something I just needed to do.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm sure a lot of kids, possibly in your class even, have had to go through this or are going through this.
Sure.
And it's something you can write about. You don't always have to write about it in a negative way. You can. But you can write about meaningful things that have actually happened to you, no matter what that is. And often you get better songs for it, even though it can be a difficult process.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's like a really good thing to talk about. And I encourage, like, I find it really hard. I always end up writing about my experiences from kind of like my experience, even though I sometimes do use metaphor to try to explain it differently. But most of the time it's kind of like, it's a direct, like, this has happened to me and this is how I'm feeling, and it's kind of like internalizing my thoughts. But we do have the ideas about, one of the suggestions I gave my year 10s was, why not write about being a beach ball? Like, imagine being left on the beach by, because your family left you there. And how would you personify your feelings if you were that beach ball? And then someone could listen to that and take away whatever they wanted from it, because it's like it's not a human object. It's it has no emotions really. But how do we know that? So why don't you try writing about that? And we've got some kids writing about being an octopus, which I found really cool. That's a really neat song. Really neat stuff. I actually just want to mention before we finish one thing you mentioned right at the very beginning, and I think this is really important that kids know this, is like, when you write music, you kind of subconsciously want people to validate it for you. Like, you want somebody to like it, right? You want to have somebody to say to you, that's a great song, because then you make yourself feel good. And I always challenge people to think about it like this: why not write songs, which you do anyway? Write songs that you like, because it's therapy for you, as you've just explained. It allows you to internalize your dialogue. And then if somebody likes it, that's fine. And if some people don't, that's cool as well. And obviously you weren't saying anything like, people don't like it, blah, blah, blah. But it's more just reminding people that at the end of the day, a lot of it is, the music industry is extremely wide and huge. You ain't probably going to get heard by everybody. But it's really important that when you get into songwriting, I feel it's such a beautiful experience that I have tons of songs that nobody has ever heard before, but it's just that process of writing. And you mentioned it's such a healing thing, and I think kids could learn a lot about themselves through the art of songwriting, and I can see it happening already.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
So that was a good point you made. And I wanted to come back to it. And I always ask this last question to catch people off guard. So, I mean, if you've seen my episodes, you'll know what I'm going to ask. But basically, I'd like you to think about 3 words three words advice that you could give to students that think, it could be anything to do with music and inspiration for you. Anything that you think would help students to get into songwriting, because it's such a vulnerable thing to do, really.
I guess showcase yourself.
Okay.
I've always been someone that was very private and very shy and scared to show anything I was working on. And it wasn't until, like I said, meeting the pop people that they're like, hey, you're actually good. You could like practice this and come do things. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I had been doing that since I was a kid, like maybe I would have been a lot more confident, having and had a lot more relationships with people who were like-minded. So yeah, just kind of, I guess, being
Showcase
brave,
yourself.
showcasing. Yeah.
I love that.
A second word.
No, that's it. Those are your 3 words. Unless you're going to use showcase. I think showcase yourself is perfect.
Oh, I was just saying showcase.
Oh, actually,
okay.
showcase. Actually, Mr. Rurg, you're not an English teacher. Yes, I know that showcase yourself is actually 2 words. Okay, I'm sorry. So showcase. So no, keep going.
Showcase. Be honest. I feel like there's a lot of regurgitation of what other people are saying in songs out there, and we're just getting the same narrative, but tell your honest story.
So can I change it into honesty? So we got showcase.
Yeah, honesty. Yeah.
Honesty, and then one last word.
Honest. Gosh. Experiment.
Nice.
Yeah, just be brave, be abstract, be different.
Those are great words of advice, and I think that's kind of like how I try to. I think music is meant to be those things. You'd attest to this as well. You learn so much about yourself when you write a song. It's like a really private experience, and when you get to share it and someone comes up to you and they say, I get it, man, that's like, that song really changed my life. Like, you would have heard artists where their songs have really been profound to you and it's changed your life, and yeah, such a great thing. So showcase, honesty, and experiment.
Yes.
That becomes your episode title.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's good. Fantastic to meet you. We'd never met until I had contacted Keeley about her song after I got to review it. I was like, can you please come on my show? And so if anyone's watching and they want to be part of it, they just need to contact me, and let's chat. Have you enjoyed our conversation tonight?
Oh, absolutely. No, it's been amazing to get to talk about something I've been working on for so long with someone who really appreciates it. So yeah,
most welcome.
It's been cool.
Most welcome. Cool. And that's it. Until next time, guys, make sure that I'll say it for Joel and my class. Make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that little bell notification fam, so you can get updated with all the episodes. And that's it. And so probably 20 years from now, when people watch it, they'll be like, what's a bell notification? Maybe YouTube doesn't even exist anymore. I don't know.
Ooh.
Okay, but take care, and we'll catch up soon.
Cool. Thanks, Ben.
All good. See you later.